Closed captioning is also available for this session. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Kate Gardner and Melanie Lever for a shell of a good time.
Hello, everyone. First, I would love to thank you all for joining us on a Friday afternoon. I'm hoping everyone has wonderful weather where they are, but I'm glad that you chose to spend this time with us. So as Kendra mentioned, our presentation is called A Shell of a Good Time. It's going to be about ready to teach OER course shells, the experience that we've had in our first full year with this project and the lessons that we've learned. So when Kendra and hold on just a minute. I can't make it progress. There we go. So when Kendra and Melanie and I sat down to plan this presentation, we actually were having a really good time. And as part of that, we wanted to put everyone at ease. And we decided a good way to do that was to share some really flattering pictures of ourselves. So here are some pictures of us from decades past, I will say. So here at the far left hand of the screen is me, Kate Gardner. I'm the instructional designer. In the middle with the piccolo stare, you have Melanie Lever. She's our Associate Dean of Distance Learning and Instructional Design. And then on the far right with the somewhat confused expression, we have Kendra Lake, who is our librarian and of course our wonderful moderator today. So now that you can see what we look like then and we look like now, we can get started with the presentation.
Hi, and welcome everyone. Thanks for the introductions, Kate. To kind of get us started on the conversation, I want to make sure that we all have kind of the same definition of what an OER Ready to Teach course shell is. And how we define it here is that one of these Ready to Teach course shells, it has everything that an instructor would need to just go with the course on day one with very minimal modification. They might need to fill out their instructor bio, maybe create an announcement or two about themselves, but just ready to go. And one of the big requirements that we've had for our shells is that they were based 100% on OER materials and resources. So in thinking back over the last year, one of the big questions is, why did we undertake this process? Why did we go through that? And three main reasons. The first one being for our faculty. It was humane. I know sometimes our faculty, and when I say faculty, I mean our full-timers and our adjuncts, often get tasked with, oh my gosh, we've got to have this course on the schedule in just a short amount of time. Nothing's been developed. Here you go. You don't have a lot of time. Go for it. So we thought it was a very kind thing to do for our faculty. It also provided teaching resources for last minute staffing changes. We found out in the past year that some of our adjuncts sometimes get full-time jobs and need to leave us. So we'll have to fill someone in at short notice. And we also found that it's been very supportive for people who are new to teaching, but they've been professionals in their industry in a long time. So it kind of helped them know what teaching in higher education looks like. In COVID, it also highlighted a few areas of weakness that we have. So we're able to now transition to online more quickly and efficiently than, say, we did in March of 2020. And now we have the ability for the whole institution to move online, but it also provides benefits for individual faculty members. So if they get sick or they have some kind of an emergency, they have resources to pull from that they can put online, put in our LMS so that student learning can continue when they're not there. Sometimes our folks, a sub can't be found on campus, and so they'll just move to online assignments. We also found that it was a great way to introduce some of our veteran faculty to what I call the new OER, which, as we know, has a lot of the same features and rich resources that they've come to expect from for-profit publishers. And this project also did a great thing, and it identified the need that we had for full-time instructional design support. So this project allowed us to hire Kate, who's going to be speaking a little bit more about the course development process in a few minutes. And this project helped to introduce our faculty to Kate and what a great resource instructional designers are. Another reason that we did this project was for the college. When you're in a rural area, kind of like we are here in Northern Michigan, faculty recruitment can be tough. Sometimes our outstanding faculty that we have need a little support when we have extra sections of courses that are opening up. Sometimes our full-time faculty, they would like a break from teaching just some of the gen ed classes that they've been teaching, and allows them to, shift to teach some upper level or special topics classes, because we can cover those lower level gen eds for them for a while. It also allowed us to have some online program support. In winter of 2021, North Central received their permission from the Higher Learning Commission to offer fully online programs. And so having Ready to Teach course shells has allowed us to ensure that we're meeting our enrollment demand, making sure that we can offer online courses in sequence in those online programs so that students can complete in 2 years. It helps us with overall enrollment. It ensures that we can offer all classes, when students need them, even if they're not enrolled in an online program. And it also helped to provide kind of that ROI on the institution's investment in this project and in a full-time instructional designer, through showing that we have some increased retention, improved student outcomes, because faculty have this specialized support that helps to elevate their classes. They have someone to brainstorm with and find creative and new ways to use technology for activities and assessments in their classes. The third main reason that we took this project on, of course, was the students. It can be tough for students to fill out their schedule due to work, family, and other personal responsibilities. A lot of the times they can't be on campus 5 days a week or even 4 days a week. So what they're able to do is, be on campus the days that they can, and they can fill their schedule with online classes at other times. And with the OER component, of course, we have the student savings. It also, and I mentioned before, we were able to kind of introduce the new OER to some of our seasoned faculty. We hired a new full-time math faculty this year, and he brought a passion for Lumen and Lumen's math OER homework platform. And it just might help loosen the grip of that one online math homework platform that we shall not name, but we're kind of excited about that. It helps us with equity. Our students aren't waiting to see if they really need the textbook on any of the other course materials. I was surprised to hear those words from my own daughter's mouth when she started college this year. She was wanting to wait to buy textbooks. So, it's very, very common. So with our Ready to Teach course shells with OER, students get everything on day one that they need. And it helped us also in the establishment of our online programs because it helped us kind of create some consistency among our online courses, giving them some hallmark characteristics of quality courses that are in online programs. So consistent navigation, consistent terminology. And by that, I mean, we have discussions and sometimes they get called assignments because the assignment is to do a discussion. So we're able to kind of help with the terminology so that it's always clear to students what they're supposed to do. Consistency and deadlines across courses. And we mean Latin like days and times, so like discussion posts, like initials on Thursday, responses on Sunday, and having deadlines that are consistently at 11:59 p.m. so that some courses aren't at 11:15 and some are at 11:30 and some are, 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So just helping students success that way. It also helped us to build in some automated student support functions from our LMS. We use Brightspace by D2L, and it has what's called intelligent agents that can help monitor student activity and automate emails and other communications to advisors, instructors, and the students. So if they haven't logged in by the third day of the semester, or maybe at some point during the semester, they haven't logged in for 5 days, it can notify someone so that we can get in touch with the student and kind of help figure out what's going on. So kind of those proactive measures that help students be successful. So when did we start taking this project on? As Kate mentioned earlier, we started about a year ago. And what really allowed us to do this was some of the COVID funding that we had received that was, dedicated specifically to distance learning technologies. And so as a small community college, we have a small budget. And for us, it really felt good to be able to provide ready to teach OER course shells to our faculty, just kind of like the bigger schools do. So we felt like just being able to provide these resources to our small community college faculty was amazing. How did we go about getting this project initiated? Well, one of the very first things that we had to do was policy development. Then we worked through some project management items, and then of course moved into course development. But in talking about our policy development, we kind of had to start talking first about, what makes a ready to teach course shell different from just a regular course shell that an instructor would build and teach on their own. And for us, it came down to 6 things. Number one, of course, being built on an OER foundation. It put faculty in control of our content and not the publishers. It helped make course shells have a more predictable, what I call like freshness expiration date, because the content and the renewal of content and review was up to the instructors of the institution and not controlled by publishers putting out a new edition. We also knew that our ready to teach course shells were meant to be shared from the very beginning. So when folks were developing these, they knew that they were building them for others. Quality was another thing that we really wanted in there. So we made sure that these ready to teach course shells were built by HLC qualified faculty or other kind of subject matter experts that could help bring in and consult on projects. So that was also something that we hadn't done before. So that was very interesting. We also knew that this project would be very collaborative. And I kind of call it our dream team approach to course development because it involved an instructional designer, a subject matter expert, and our librarian. And so we had none of our course developers felt alone. They felt very supported. We also used best practices. We have our own course development rubric at North Central that is QM based. So our ready to teach shells were built with a QM based design. And they were built up from the ground up for student success, which included ensuring that the course and its materials were all 100% accessible. That presented some unique challenges, and we learned a lot through that process as well. So to kind of get us started after we knew what we wanted to have these course shells look like, we had to start out with some handbooks and agreements. We already had a distance education handbook and an online course development guide and QM-based design rubric. And so we adapted our existing policy documents and handbooks for this project. And one of the main things that we did was in step 2 of this process, which is in project management. In some of my previous experiences, sometimes it's not always really well known how long it takes to build a quality online course. So when I did some research, we came up with, a general 3 to 5 month timeline. So what we created was a 15-week timeline for the building of these courses that included 6 phases, and each phase having an estimated timeline for completion and had an associated deliverable. So we had to have our instructors meet with us, kind of go over the requirements, signing the documents. They worked on that, filling out a course mapping document, doing that, then assembling all their course materials. And then we would start building the course in the LMS. And of course, we would have a course review process and revision and approval and final signing off on the contract. The course mapping document that I mentioned has been very beneficial for not just these ready to teach course shelves, but for all of our instructors in general. It gave them a way to map out their courses and how they were teaching, even in on-campus classes, because they could figure out what they were doing every week, how they were assessing student learning. It helped them establish their grade books and other activities in their classes. The other thing that really helped us with this project was communication. And in this case, it was a communication dashboard. And this dashboard was available to our VP of academics. It was available to all of our deans so that they could see each and every course that was in development and where it was in the timeline and how where faculty was in the process. So that was incredibly helpful for us. The step 3 in our course development process is actual course development. So before I turn everything over to Kate to talk a little bit about that, I didn't know if anyone had any questions. Anything in the chat, Kendra?
I don't see anything in the chat at this moment, but if anybody does, feel free to enter it in the chat, and we can always address it towards the end of the session too. So if you guys think of things we're talking.
All right. Take it away, Kate.
All right. So now I'm going to talk about sort of where the rubber meets the road, the actual course development process. So I will actually have Kendra go first, because before we even really start meeting with the developers, we do, Kendra does a lot of magical work, and I will let her describe her magical work.
So I've spent a lot of time. I started at North Central in 2020, right in the midst of the pandemic. So I've spent the last couple of years working to develop relationships with my fellow faculty members and try to get a feel for, because I am an OER advocate, get a feel for where they are, what types of things they might be looking at in their classes, you know, where they've been previously, that kind of thing. This has helped me develop relationships in a different context, and really work to connect faculty with the library, not just with regards to OER, but other things that we can do to support them as well. So I had like some self-interest in being a part of this project as well, just weaseling the library into various aspects of things going on at the college, because we want to be involved in everything, right? To start, Melanie presented this project to me. So with a list of prioritized classes that she'd been provided from the deans. And so I wanted to start like proactively collecting some materials, because I figured we've got this huge list. I'm going to be bombarded with all these people. So I started working on a LibGuide specific to the RTT course development. And the intent was to be able to provide just some quick links, short things that I had gone through the syllabus, the master syllabus for the course, and connected a few resources from a variety of different locations that I thought might work well for a starting point for discovering content for these courses. And then the reality of the situation for anyone that's tried to, redesign a class or help someone discover content that might be beneficial to their class. You recognize that everyone's situation is going to be different. Every class is very different. Every instructor's approach is very different. So the reality was I couldn't necessarily have, a fully robust a page like here's all the stuff, pick from this, because that just wasn't reality. And then there was also some spots where OER didn't 100% fit, but we wanted to be able to help provide content. So we did some purchasing of individual items to make sure that anything they were using, we had perpetual access to. So I don't know if anybody's seen that recent Wiley discussion or whatever on removal of some of their ebooks from some of the ProQuest platforms because they were being used in classes. So anytime I'm aware of a faculty member who wants to use an ebook or a video or something, I make sure that we can purchase perpetual access to that item, even if it is something that we have currently subscribed at the time, because things change, budgets change. So if we retain that access, it will be permanent. So it's not necessarily all OER, it's just being creative with regards to the content. And then I supported from a license education standpoint. So all of the faculty coming into this that I've worked with so far are coming in at different points of understanding of copyright and Creative Commons licensing and those types of things. So just being a resource for them to know that they could rely on when they come across something and say, okay, so what does this mean I can do with it? And knowing that really just being reassuring to them in a couple of cases that you're doing fine, it'll be okay, has been something that I was helping with. Kate, you can go ahead and move to the next slide and I'll just show a quick screenshot of. So I organized our LibGuide according to division. So I wanted it to be familiar. Everyone could find the home and the course in which they were looking for. So I organized it by courses, textbooks, and supplemental content. So primarily, I want to look and see if there's anything that they could use as sort of a template as a course goes to provide some additional resources on top of, a textbook. And then when there weren't necessarily good aligned courses for that, I looked for a few open textbooks and then a ton of supplemental content. I did not include any homework management solutions in my list of items. There are some good open wrapped ones that people work with, but my goal was to provide resources that were strictly zero cost to students in this case, and I think that was the primary intent of this project. So I selected things for level of completeness and level of open. So the more open, the more likely it would be to be at the top of the list. And then, as I mentioned, as a last resort in those areas, I did a scan of some books that maybe we could purchase unlimited user licenses from the library. So that's kind of my approach to the project, and that's kind of how I approach working with faculty in general and supporting their OER needs. So it wasn't a new concept to me, but it was fun to be a part of the team, because normally I just kind of say, here's some things I found, and then they go off on their merry way, and I never really know, 100% whether or not they've used it or what they've done with it since then. So it's kind of cool to see the process as a whole come together. So.
All right. So when we have our developer identified, we start the process of actually developing the course. And you're going to hear me say the words collaboration and communication a lot in the next few slides, because those really are sort of the cornerstones of the entire process. So it sort of breaks down into three parts. We start with a kickoff meeting, and that is where Melanie and I invite the developer to either to campus, preferably campus, or we can do a Zoom, and we talk about the project as a whole. And that does a few things. The first thing we do is we go over the nuts and bolts, and this is where we'll go over sort of maybe the development guide. We spend a lot of time looking at the map and talking about the different parts, how to use it, what you're going to put where, and we really try to set expectations. This is where we talk about the timeline. We'll populate their Gantt chart that Melanie has so they can see when their different deliverables are going to be due, and we really try to set those expectations so people know what we're asking of them, what they're getting into here. But then we also try to build a lot of excitement. This is where we talk about interesting assessments that we might use, techniques that someone maybe has always wanted to implement in a class but never had a chance to do that. And so this is really a place where we build enthusiasm and excitement. And then either at the end of that meeting, or sometimes I'll send an email afterward, I like to sort of put together a communication plan. So do you want to meet in person while we're we're working on this? Do you prefer email? Do you prefer phone? What is going to work best for you? Because we will likely be in communication a lot over the coming months. So what we have found is this is just a key component to the process. So we had a few situations where we had to do things over email because of time or distance, things like that. And we find that the people that we meet with in person or over Zoom are a lot more excited and they have a better understanding of what they're about to do. So I would highly suggest that if this is something you're going to do at your own organization, that you really have that kickoff meeting. It is a critical component to the process. So once we have our wonderful feel-good meeting, everyone leaves, we're all excited, it's wonderful. That is when the developer will start to design the course. So they take that beautiful map that Melanie has given them and they start to put in their objectives, they start to find their content, develop their assessments. They might work really closely with us on this point, but they might not. It depends on what OERs they've identified with Kendra. They may just be able to kind of run with it, or they might need a lot of input as to how things are going to be used. This is a point where we really start to talk about accessibility because if we move on to development and we haven't considered accessibility, we have a lot more work down the road. So this is a great place to say, you know, as you're picking your videos, make sure you're picking them with human edited captions. If you're using PDFs, take a look at them, see if they are accessible, if they're going to work with screen readers. And this is a great place for developers to learn about these things and how to make sure they're choosing accessible sources and how to make things accessible if they aren't already. And then again, communication. This is a point where we really need to be, anytime they have a question, I want to make sure they know they can come to me. They're not just floating out on their own. And to Kendra and to Melanie, I know different developers have worked with each of us in different ways during this design phase. So once they have that map done and it looks wonderful, they send it to Melanie. Melanie takes a look. She makes sure we've got a good alignment, that we've got, you know, good, robust content in each of the modules, that we've got a lot of, what is our favorite, the reasonable and expected.
Regular and substantive interaction.
Regular and substantive. We say it so often, I can't believe I forgot what it was. So we've got a lot of RSI. We've got a reasonable amount of student work that it meets the requirements that we need for federal distance education, and that it's got, you know, good solid course design. So once that's approved, we move into the development stage. We like to use templates here. So we do have a Brightspace template that has just a really good structure to copy over that we can start putting all of our assignments, all of our content, everything into, and that really speeds up the process. And I will say, I do not know how much time Melanie put into that at the front end. The times that I've had to put in all of those things on my own for a course, it takes a long time. So I highly recommend templates as well. They're very, very useful. This is where you're going to have different levels of collaboration. So you might have an instructor who's really comfortable in the LMS and they just start throwing things in there. They know what they're doing. They've got everything sorted out. And then you have some who don't, or they want to do something that they don't know how to do. And you're going to have to work together to make their vision a reality at this point. And again, accessibility. So hopefully we've done a lot of front end work. We know that all of our videos are properly captioned. We know that everything's going to work well with assistive technology. But if not, this is where we start to go through and make sure that we are doing the work to either find something to replace it that is accessible or making what we have work. So once it is developed and it's a beautiful product, Melanie takes a look at it. She has a rubric that she talked about earlier. The developer has that rubric from the beginning. So they know they can take a look at that as they're designing their course and see how, what we're going to evaluate, and they can know that they're hitting those marks as they're going along. So she uses that rubric and she takes a look at it and develops it. And approves it, and we have a beautiful new RTT out in the world. So one of the things that I love to collect data on anything in any format. So we use Trello to track our projects, and I put timers on all of my Trello boards. So I did my best. Anytime I worked on a different project, a different RTT, I would turn that timer on so I could kind of get an idea of how much time we were spending on each different kind of course. And of course, there was a wide variety. So we had the lower level here, which was probably about 20 hours of extra work, and that included development time in the LMS. So that's not a whole lot of time that I had to give these particular developers. So these were typically people who really knew the LMS, or they really knew quality matters and they knew what they were doing. They didn't really need a lot of assistance from me. These were also developers who had maybe more straightforward course materials. They didn't have any integrations. They didn't have anything that needed that we had to figure out how to make it work in Brightspace. And these were people who generally had materials that were more accessible from the get-go. I know we had one developer who had a lot of videos, and she just did a really great job of choosing sources that made sure they had human edited captions in place. And then on the other hand, you have maybe the more high intensity developers. And there is no good or bad here. It's just a continuum. And so these were courses that I was probably putting in 60 hours or more on. They maybe had less experience in the LMS or less quality matters experience. A lot of maybe they had integrations that we had to figure out, and that can take forever sometimes. And maybe they needed a little bit more help making their materials accessible. So let's see. So we had our different levels of support. And when we sat down to plan out our presentation, Kendra brought up this assignment that she had heard about, where students had been asked to, I think it was a biology class, to make Tinder profiles for different animals that they were learning about. So we decided to use that a little bit here. So we have made Tinder profiles for the different kind of both developers and instructors who will make and use these RTT courses. So we start out with the champ, and this is the one you are definitely going to swipe right on. And I think I have that right. I'm not positive. And this person says, hang on, you mean that you'll pay me to build a course shell that I can copy afterwards to teach with and tweak to make my own, and I don't even have to get in the ring? And I'll have an instructor at my side, an instructional designer at my side to help me every step of the way. Sign me up to build all of them and I'll knock them out. And we have had that. I mean, we have a couple of those who are just dedicated to the process, and they're excited and enthusiastic. These are great change champions. These are the developers and the instructors who are going to go out into the rest of the college and say wonderful things about your projects. You definitely want them. You also have the grateful. So this is often an instructor who's going to use your RTT course, and they say, I absolutely love myself some RTT course shell goodness. I don't have to spend any time building or tweaking a course shell. Subject matter experts and instructional designers have done all the work for me. Give me as many as you have. So these are your instructors who want to use your RTTs, and they are also great allies to have because they can speak to how easy it is to just drop into an RTT and start using it, which is a very valuable thing. You also have the Speedster. So this is another developer. So the Speed Racer says, it's not what you're thinking, ladies. I'm married to the sport, but you can start signing my check while I import a publisher cartridge. While you're at it, contract me for 3 more. I'll have them done faster than you can say, go Speed Racer, go. So this person is very enthusiastic. You have to sort of harness that enthusiasm. You have to point them in the direction of the OERs instead of the publisher cartridges. You have to remind them that we have some federal distance education requirements we have to meet, but they have a lot of enthusiasm. And if you can tap into that, you have someone who's got a great work ethic and will work quickly on your project. Now we have DeBomb. So this is another instructor who might use your RTTs. And they say, why so serious? I'll agree to teach with an RTT course shell, and the night before day 1, I'll delete everything in it. I'll load some stuff whenever I have the time. Wait till the students get a load of me. So this is an instructor who maybe doesn't quite understand what has been built into the RTT. They get it. They start to dismantle it a little bit. We do encourage customizing RTTs. This goes sort of a step beyond that. So I would say that the DeBomb is a lesson that we learned. It's something we're going to talk about a little bit later. We sort of have to think about what the motivations are for that and how we're going to handle that. but you may well run into one of those. And then, of course, we have what every good project has, which is the skeptic. And this adorable little face here is Melanie's son. So it was the most skeptical photo we could find when we were looking for this. He says, "You're not fooling anyone. I'll build this course, and then you just have to trust that you're going to hire someone that knows what they're doing to teach it right. And I'm Santa Claus." And every project has skeptics. It is not reasonable to expect that our enthusiasm and good intentions are going to win everyone over right out of the gate. But this is a great person to work with. If they are willing to work with you, then you can have this great experience together. And then now you have an ally instead of someone who is skeptical of your work. So, and maybe they're very super cute here. So, all right. Does anybody have any questions at this point? No
I
question.
think we can keep moving on forward.
All right. So now we're going to talk about our successes, and then we're going to move on to our lessons learned. So first up on successes, I'm on a tiny laptop screen, so I don't remember whose job it is.
Oh,
to
that
do
would be
this. I
me.
can't
So
see anything.
I'm talking Oer Growth. So this has, as I mentioned earlier, it's given me an opportunity to build additional relationships with faculty with regards to OER discovery. And it's helping us kind of expand our zero cost and OER tracking. So we know it's a lot of work to completely redevelop a course using OER. So in a lot of the conversations that I'd had with faculty, bringing in certain aspects of things, some open readings and some assignments and those types of things, really, when you're not fully redesigning the course, is a great way to kind of start with OER, but like just doing a full course redesign isn't where everyone's at all the time. So having this be sort of a new context to just starting right out the gate with OER, with course development, has really helped us grow. And it's also helped really showcase the ability of faculty to be able to be in control of the content and be creative in providing, as I've heard in other presentations, this conference, providing that context and local context, or opening up the text for the inclusion of different voices. It really highlights the ability for faculty to be able to do that, and I think that's where they really shine.
Right. Another one of our successes is our ability to support both developers and instructors. So we like to be good cheerleaders and champions and supporters. So when we're working with our developers, we want them to feel really good about what they're making and to learn new things that they want to learn. And we end up learning a lot at the same time. So we do try to really champion their work and be as supportive as we can. We've also found that the whole RTT process helps build equity. So we've talked a little bit about how, and everybody knows, you've got adjuncts who are hired and they might put a lot of work into a course that doesn't end up running, or they might be hired without a lot of time to put it together. So this kind of helps level the playing field there a little bit. And it also gives us the ability to hire adjuncts who have a wealth of professional experience for developing courses. They can bring all that in, and we can help put it within the framework of a full course. And so our students benefit from that as well. Let's see. So now we're going to move on to lessons learned, which, we only had a handful. Everything was very, very smooth.
So this slide was previously titled institutional politics, but that always, to me, I don't know, it feels icky. So I would say just recognizing and being able to work amongst the variety of perspectives that are involved in this project has been something that we're always learning. It's all about communication and listening. So we recognize there are so many different stakeholders in this project because it affects, as Melanie showed in the beginning of the why, there are so many voices in this project. So having everybody on the same page with regards to how it's going to be beneficial to the students and how it's going to be beneficial to faculty and the institution as a whole has been something that we've learned over time, and how to communicate that. And also the struggle between making this something that's an institutional priority when there are other concurrent initiatives going on. I'm sure everybody faces that, where you're pulled in a million different directions, and being able to have the time and energy and to be on and focused on this one to make sure that it's successful can be a challenge. And then similarly with timing and communication. So sometimes in higher ed, as I'm sure everyone is aware, everything is either like kicked down the road about 5 years, or else it needed to happen yesterday. So that can be a real challenge with regards to having clear communication and having a set time frame in which is reasonable to expect people to be successful. So that's been something that we've been growing and learning about. You're muted.
I'm muted. It had to happen. We couldn't get through a Zoom meeting without that. Something else that we had to learn was to kind of look out for setting reasonable expectations about timelines and project load. And we had to learn to be very careful what we ask for. We were very excited about this Ready to Teach OER course shell project, and I think we may have gotten everyone else excited, maybe too excited. When I put out the initial call to our deans to give me a list of courses that they would prioritize for first development, I received 85 individual course shell requests to get those built in the year. So that was a lesson that we needed to figure out how to prioritize how we were going to develop courses. The other thing we learned is that we needed to be incredibly flexible. We had built some flexibility in that timeline that we had talked about with that was, the 15 weeks with deadlines and deliverables. And we built some flexibility in it, but we didn't quite understand in the beginning just how much flexibility we were going to need. In some cases, we would have a developer that would put a map together in 24 hours. For others, it might take 6 to 8 weeks instead of the 3 weeks that we allotted. So as our instructors and our developers move through each phase of the process, we found that it was very individualized. And that Gantt chart, that dashboard was just, unbelievably helpful when it came to keeping the deans apprised of where everyone was in that course development process, so that they knew when they could expect to put classes on the schedule, or when they needed to start, if they needed to recruit adjunct faculty for those. So that was very, very valuable. The other thing was that there is, as Kate said, never enough communication. We just needed more communication. So from one aspect, we needed more communication from our senior academic leadership to help everyone understand, why we were doing this project and how it was going to help the college, help the faculty, and help the students. And we think that really would have kind of helped address some of the concerns of the skeptics that we had. The other thing that we learned is that faculty developer initial kickoff meeting is absolutely invaluable. We had an instance where we didn't have that requirement for one developer because something came down with timing. And the project went on and on for almost the entire year because we weren't able to help that faculty member understand that they had a wealth of resources and support from us, and that we were there for them every step of the way, from designing the map to the materials to the accessibility. So that is something that we have as a hard requirement now. And what we have found is sometimes folks are a little reluctant to come because, everyone loves another meeting. But we found that they leave super excited and they feel really supported. And they've said that they just feel 1,000 pounds lighter because they almost feel like the majority of the work we're going to do for them. And I think it's the opposite. I think the, curriculum development is the tough job. So it works out really well for every one of us. We also needed to make sure that we communicated how these ready to teach course shells were going to be rolled out for folks. And I think that maybe would be better communication coming from the deans. Why did they, ask for a certain course to be developed? What was their strategy behind that? So we're working on that communication now too. When I mentioned earlier about getting the request for 85 shells in that first year, and we need to be more strategic in how we identified courses for development. And by that, it really prompted us to explore how the institution was prioritizing courses in alignment with our new online programs, so that we knew how we were going to rotate our online courses, how many sections that we would need. And so that has led to now we have new advising sheets for students who are going to engage in an online program, because their requirements and their options that they might have in the program might be more limited than if they were going to do it on campus, because we don't offer every single flavor of class that we have on campus. We don't offer it online. And then we also need to consider how we roll out a ready to teach course shell to maybe some new adjuncts, particularly those that we call the bomb. So, like I said, we had an instructor on day one, just delete everything, and then just kind of started with an empty shell. And that was an instructor who was new to teaching, was new to distance learning, wasn't really aware of all of those kinds of requirements. And so we need to do a better job with communication on that, because we really did promote that our ready to teach course shells weren't locked down, that they were the starting point that they could go with from day one, and that they had the freedom to, change course materials, add them, tweak assignments, change questions, to make it fit their personal teaching style. So we're still kind of working with our distance learning committee to kind of find maybe that middle road of how maybe we can maybe lock some permissions down for the very first semester when someone's brand new, or come up with other kinds of onboarding or professional development before someone were to teach with a ready to teach shell.
Oh, okay, I managed to unmute myself. So yeah, we have come to the end of our presentation. I wanted to put up the screen with the slide with all of our contact information in case anyone had questions that they would prefer to email to us, but we are ready for any questions anyone has.
All right. Well, while we wait for questions, Kate, I know you had just a little bit you wanted to talk about with regards to what you've learned about meeting faculty where they're at too. So,
well, actually, I think Melanie did cover a lot of that from an implementation perspective. Yes, I think that being presented with a course shell that you did not make can be a little overwhelming. So we're looking into some different methods for maybe putting on some guardrails. But also, I think sitting down with an instructor before they teach that course shell, showing them what modules look like, where they can find different things so that they don't open it up and go, I really don't know where anything is. It'd be like moving into a house and all of the stuff is put away, but you don't know where any of it is or what any of it is. So, and then from a development perspective, just really being aware of who you're working with, what kinds of needs they might have, and planning accordingly. That's going to help you manage your time, and that's really going to help you give them the support they need to be successful. So, and the last thing is, I think it's really important to have a team of people that you can laugh hysterically with. That makes all of it so much easier. When we first sat down to plan this presentation, I think we spent just as much time cackling hysterically as we did actually writing anything. So
agree. I have a comment / question from Tracy in the chat. And she says that she finds it all of the processes to be interesting because it aligns to the course development process at their institution, but for all courses, not just OER. So just wondering if we can learn from each other and being open to sharing between institutions about course development processes, and would be happy to talk to that by email if that's something that be open to. And I think Kate and Melanie are probably fairly always open to having a conversation anytime we and then wondering if it would be possible to look at the dashboard. So that dashboard that you set up, Melanie, is a work of art in itself. If that's something that you have as maybe a template or something that you could share.
Absolutely.
And then a question, wondering if there are any template examples that you'd be willing to share with regards to, I'm guessing with regards to specific courses or templates within the LMS.
Absolutely. We have, I think, what I would call two kinds of templates. The first being a basic, what I call our course shell framework. So it would have all 15 modules. They would all be named. They would have the release dates. All assignments already have, start, due, end dates. All of those things are done. Other templates that we provide are like for a discussion board prompt. So here's, where you have the actual prompt, here's what your initial prompt, and then showing them how to write a really good responses, setting students up to learn through their responses so that it's not written as just respond to two of your peers. So we try to make, help people think through that as well. So I can provide both kinds.
And then the last question from Kate Pitsley Souza, just with regards to having, if there have been any faculty who have had concerns about academic freedom throughout this process.
I think in the very beginning, when we started the RTT OER project, it was done with from the very get-go that this was for sharing. We also, and maybe, like I mentioned, maybe over promoted the fact that folks could customize them however they wanted to fit their personal teaching styles. And what I mean by that is we had the bomb. So we're, like I said, we're going to have more discussions internally with our distance learning committee to kind of figure out maybe what a middle of the road approach might be for that.
Something else I wanted to note, and it's something we've had conversations about, these are specifically contracted as RTT courses. So faculty are still welcome to develop whatever kind of course they want to for online and go through our online course approval process for that course to teach on their own and that kind of thing too. So these are kind of separate parallel tracks that are taken, and that's something that just with regards to when a faculty member is considering developing a course, the dean and you, I'm guessing, meet together with the faculty to determine which is the best path for that faculty member and for that course, right?
Absolutely.
So thank you, everybody. We've gone over a couple minutes. My apologies. Thank you, everybody, for attending today. Thank you, Kate and Melanie, for your insights. And just a reminder that we're going to have a wrap-up session here in a few minutes. Log on to Sketch to grab the link for that. And I hope you all join us so that we can all decompress about our last couple of days and where we want to go from here. So thank you guys all so much for attending. Have a wonderful weekend. Hope it's sunny where you all are.